Welcome back. I hope you're comfortable. This story deserves your full attention.
My husband's late mother was alive. She was living in our basement for 4 years. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd end up crawling through a dark basement with a flashlight between her teeth. But life has a funny way of turning you into someone you don't recognize. It started on a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday until it didn't. I was folding laundry in the bedroom when I heard it. A soft thump, like something had fallen. It came from below the floorboards, from the basement. I froze. The house was supposed to be empty. Mark was at work. I was alone. "Hello?" I called out, feeling stupid immediately. Houses creak. Pipes groan. It was nothing. But then I heard it again. Louder this time. A deliberate sound. Like footsteps. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I set down the towel I was folding and walked to the top of the basement stairs. The door was closed. It was always closed. Mark had told me the basement was off limits when we moved in 4 years ago. Structural issues, he'd said, his voice soft and sad. My mother used to store things down there. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to clear it out. "It's not safe. Please, Claire, don't go down there." I'd respected that. For 4 years, I'd respected that. I'd walked past that door 1,000 times and never once opened it. Because I loved him. Because I trusted him. But now, standing at the top of those stairs, hearing something moving below, trust felt like a very thin thread. I reached for the doorknob. It was locked. That should have been the end of it. A locked door. A husband's request. A rational explanation for a strange noise. But something in my gut twisted. Something primal and cold. I went to the kitchen drawer where Mark kept his tools. I found a small screwdriver. I came back to the basement door and wedged it between the doorframe and the lock. It took 3 tries. The wood was old and soft. On the third push, the lock popped. The door swung open. A smell hit me immediately. Not the smell of mold or damp concrete. Something else. Something living. Food. Soap. Human. I stood at the top of the stairs, my hand trembling on the railing. The basement was dark. No light switch that I could see. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness like a knife. The stairs were wooden, old, creaking with every step I took. Dust motes danced in the light. I could hear my own breathing, loud and ragged in the silence. Halfway down, I saw it. A light. Faint. Coming from somewhere at the bottom. Not a natural light. A lamp. An electric lamp. My legs felt like they might give out. Someone was down there. Someone had been down there. For how long? I kept going. 1 step. 2 steps. My flashlight beam swept across the basement floor. Boxes. Old furniture. A washer and dryer that looked like they hadn't been used in decades. And then, in the corner, a door I hadn't known existed. A door built into the concrete wall. And from under that door, light was seeping. I walked toward it. My feet felt heavy, like I was moving through water. I reached the door and pressed my ear against the cold concrete. Silence. Then, a voice. Faint. Muffled, but unmistakably human. "Mark, is that you?" A woman's voice. Old, frail, but alive. I stepped back, my hand flying to my mouth. My brain couldn't process it. A woman. In our basement. Calling for my husband. I reached for the door handle. It turned easily. The door opened. And there, sitting in a worn armchair under a single bare bulb, was an old woman. She was thin, her skin pale and papery, her white hair pulled back in a loose bun. She was knitting. Knitting. Like she was sitting in a sunlit living room instead of a concrete cell under my house. She looked up at me. Her eyes were cloudy but sharp. She didn't seem surprised to see me. She just smiled. A small, knowing smile. "You must be Claire," she said, her voice like dry leaves. "I've been waiting to meet you." I couldn't speak. My mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You're dead," I finally managed. "Mark said you were dead. 4 years ago. He said you died of a heart attack. We scattered your ashes. We had a funeral." The old woman laughed. It was a soft, bitter sound. "Oh, honey." Mark's been telling that story for a long time. I backed against the wall, my legs barely holding me up. "Who are you?" "I'm Margaret," she said, setting down her knitting. "Mark's mother. The one and only." "But why? Why are you down here? Why did he tell me you were dead?" Margaret's smile faded. She looked at me with something that might have been pity or warning. "Because, Claire, some secrets are too dangerous to let walk around in the daylight. And Mark has been keeping secrets since before you were born." I felt the room spin. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold concrete floor. "I don't understand." Margaret leaned forward in her chair. 4 years ago, Mark brought me down here. He told me it was for my own good, that people were looking for me, dangerous people. He said I had to disappear, that the world needed to think I was dead. Who? Who was looking for you?" She shook her head slowly. "That's not the question you should be asking, Claire. The question you should be asking is, who is Mark? Really?" I stared at her, my mind racing. Mark. My husband. The man I'd shared a bed with for 4 years. The man who made me coffee every morning and kissed me goodbye before work. The man who cried at his mother's funeral. "He's my husband," I whispered. "He's a software engineer. He works from home sometimes. He likes old movies and jazz. He's Mark." Margaret's eyes hardened. "Mark isn't a software engineer, Claire. He never has been. And that house you live in, that nice suburban house with the picket fence, it's not his. It's mine. Bought with money that doesn't belong to him. Money that belongs to some very angry men who think I stole it from them." I felt like I was drowning. Like the air had turned to water and I couldn't pull a breath. "What money? What are you talking about?" Margaret stood up slowly, her joints cracking. She walked to a small table in the corner and opened a drawer. She pulled out a stack of papers and handed them to me. I took them with shaking hands. They were bank statements, transfer records, documents in names I didn't recognize, and at the bottom of each one, a signature I knew too well. Mark's signature. 20 years ago, Margaret said quietly, I worked for a man named Victor Hale. He ran, let's call it a business. A very profitable business that wasn't exactly legal. I was his bookkeeper. I kept the records. I knew where every dollar went. And when things started to fall apart, when the FBI started sniffing around, I did what any smart woman would do. I took what I knew, and I took some of the money, and I ran. She sat back down, her face drawn and tired. Victor never found me, but he never stopped looking, and when Mark found out who I really was, what I'd done, he saw an opportunity. He brought me here, hid me, told the world I was dead, and then he started using what I knew. The accounts, the contacts, the money. I looked down at the papers in my hands. The numbers were staggering. Millions. Tens of millions. Moving through accounts like water. Why tell me this now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Margaret's eyes met mine. Because Claire. Victor found him. 3 weeks ago. Mark got a call. I heard him through the floorboards. Victor's people are closing in. And Mark is planning to run. He's been moving money for the past 3 weeks. Getting ready to disappear. And when he goes, he's going to leave you holding the bag. I felt the blood drain from my face. No. No, he wouldn't. We have a life together. We have. You have nothing, Margaret interrupted, her voice sharp. Your name isn't on the house. Your name isn't on any of the accounts. As far as the world is concerned, you're just a woman who married a man who doesn't exist. And when Victor's people come looking, they're not going to care that you didn't know anything. They're going to want someone to pay. I sat there on the cold floor, the papers crumpling in my hands, and I felt something break inside me. Not my heart. Something deeper. The part of me that believed in the story I'd been telling myself. The story of a nice, normal life with a nice, normal man. What do I do? I asked. Margaret leaned forward, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. You do what I did 20 years ago, Claire. You take what you can, and you run. But first, you make sure Mark can't hurt anyone else ever again. How? She reached under her chair and pulled out a small metal box. She opened it and took out a flash drive. Everything is on here. Every account. Every transfer. Every name. The FBI has been looking for this for 20 years. You give it to them, and Mark goes away forever. Victor goes away forever. And you walk away free. I stared at the flash drive. It was so small, so ordinary, and it held the power to destroy everything. Why are you helping me? I asked. You don't even know me. Margaret's face softened. Because you're not the first woman Mark brought into this house, Claire. There was one before you. Her name was Linda. She found out about me too. And Mark. Mark made sure she disappeared. Not into a basement. For good. I felt my stomach lurch. What? The police ruled it an accident, Margaret said, her voice hollow. A car crash. But I heard him, Claire. I heard him on the phone. He arranged it. He paid for it. And then he moved on. Found you. Started again. The room felt like it was closing in. Linda. Another woman. Dead. Because she found out. I looked at the flash drive in Margaret's hand. Then I looked at the door. I could hear the clock ticking in my head. Mark would be home in 2 hours. Take it, Margaret said, pressing the drive into my palm. Take it and go. Don't pack a bag. Don't look back. Just go. I closed my fingers around the flash drive. It was warm from her hand. Warm from 4 years of being hidden in the dark. What about you? I asked. Margaret smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. I'm already dead, remember? Let them keep thinking that. I've been dead for 20 years. A few more won't matter. I stood up, my legs unsteady. I looked at the old woman one last time. The woman who had been living under my feet for 4 years. The woman who had just saved my life. Thank you, I whispered. She nodded. Don't thank me yet, Claire. You still have to get out of this house alive. I turned and ran. I didn't take the stairs. I couldn't risk Mark coming home early. I found a small window near the ceiling of the basement, the kind that was meant for ventilation. It was rusted shut, but I grabbed a wrench from Mark's toolbox and smashed the lock. The glass shattered, and I climbed through, cutting my hands on the shards, not caring. I emerged in the backyard, behind the hedges. The sun was blinding. I blinked, disoriented. The world looked exactly the same. The grass was green. The sky was blue. Birds were singing. But I was a different person than I had been 10 minutes ago. I ran to my car. I didn't have my purse. I didn't have my phone. I had the flash drive and the clothes on my back, and a cut on my palm that was bleeding onto the steering wheel. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove until the gas light came on, and then I pulled into a gas station and sat there, shaking, trying to think. The flash drive. I needed to get it to someone. The FBI? The police? I didn't know who to trust. Mark had been lying to me for 4 years. How did I know who else was lying? I looked at the gas station. There was a newspaper stand outside. I got out of the car and walked to it, my legs still unsteady. I bought a paper with the change in my cup holder. I went back to my car and spread it out on the passenger seat. And there, on page 3, was a headline that made my blood run cold. FBI raids software firm in money laundering scheme. I read the article with trembling hands. It was about a company I'd never heard of, but the names mentioned, Victor Hale, and another name, a name I knew too well. Mark wasn't just involved, he was the architect. The article said the FBI had been investigating for months, that arrests were imminent, that someone had been feeding them information from the inside. I looked at the flash drive on my dashboard. Someone had been feeding them information. Margaret. She hadn't been hiding for 4 years. She'd been working. From a basement under my house, she'd been building a case against her own son. I started the car and drove to the address in the article, the FBI field office. I walked in with my hands raised, the flash drive held out in front of me like a talisman. "My name is Claire Bennett," I said to the agent at the front desk. "I think you need to see this." They took me to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. They gave me water. They asked me questions. I told them everything. About Mark. About the basement. About Margaret. The agent across from me, a woman with sharp eyes and a kind face, listened without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, "we've been looking for Margaret Hale for 20 years. We never thought to look in her own basement." "She saved my life," I said. "She told me about Linda, about the other woman." The agent's face changed. Something flickered in her eyes. "Linda? Mark's wife before me. Margaret said he killed her. Made it look like an accident." The agent was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood up and left the room. She came back 10 minutes later with a folder. She opened it and slid a photograph across the table. "Is this Linda?" she asked. I looked at the photograph. It was a woman, young, with dark hair and a bright smile. She looked happy. She looked like she'd never known the kind of fear I was feeling. "Yes," I whispered. "That's her." The agent closed the folder. "Linda Hale didn't die in an accident, Mrs. Bennett. She's alive. She's been in witness protection for 4 years. She was the one who first contacted us about Mark. She was the one who told us about Margaret. And now, thanks to you, we can finally close this case." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "Alive? But Margaret said—" "Margaret said a lot of things," the agent interrupted gently. "Margaret Hale is a very smart woman. She's also a very dangerous one. She didn't hide in that basement because Mark put her there. She hid there because she chose to, because it was the one place no one would look for her, and because from there, she could control everything, including Mark, including you. But the flash drive is real," the agent said. "The information on it is real. But Margaret didn't give it to you to save you, Mrs. Bennett. She gave it to you because she knew Mark was about to crack. She knew the FBI was closing in. And she needed someone to take the fall. Someone to be in the house when we came. Someone to distract us while she slipped away." I felt the room tilt. "She used me." "She used everyone," the agent said. "But here's the thing, Claire. You have a choice now. You can be the victim in this story, or you can be the one who ends it." She slid another photograph across the table. It was a surveillance shot. Margaret, in a coat and hat, walking out of a bus station 3 towns over. Taken 2 hours ago. "She's running," the agent said, And she's running with $10 million that belongs to some very dangerous people. People who will come looking for it. People who will come looking for anyone connected to it. Including you. I looked at the photograph. At the old woman who had knitted in the dark for 4 years. Who had smiled at me and called me by my name. Who had handed me my own destruction wrapped in a lie. What do I do? I asked. The agent leaned forward. You help us find her. And in exchange, we make sure you walk away from this with your life. Your freedom. And a new name, if you want one. I sat in that small room with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and I thought about trust, about the stories we tell ourselves, about the people we let into our lives and the secrets they bury beneath our feet. Mark was arrested that night. They found him at the house, packing a suitcase, ready to run. He didn't fight. He just sat on the bed and put his hands behind his back. When they led him past me in the hallway, he didn't look at me. He looked at the floor, like he was already gone. Margaret was harder to find. She'd had 20 years to plan her escape. 20 years of hiding, of watching, of waiting for the moment to run. But she made one mistake. She underestimated me. I knew her patterns. I knew her habits. I knew the way she thought because I'd spent 4 years living above her, breathing the same air, walking the same floors. I knew she wouldn't go far. Not at first. She'd need to feel safe. She'd need to hide in plain sight. I found her in a retirement community 3 hours north. The kind of place where no one asks questions and everyone minds their own business. She was living under a different name, with a different story. But she was still knitting. Still sitting in a chair under a bare bulb. Still hiding in the dark. I didn't call the FBI right away. I went to her door. I knocked. And when she opened it, her face went white. Hello, Margaret, I said. Long time no see. She tried to close the door, but I put my foot in the frame. You don't get to run this time, I said. You don't get to hide. You don't get to use someone else to clean up your mess. Claire, she whispered. Please, you don't understand. I had to. You had to what? I interrupted. Lie to me? Use me? Let me think my husband was a killer so I'd do your dirty work? She stepped back, and I pushed the door open. The apartment was small, cluttered with the same kind of things she'd had in the basement. Old furniture, knitting supplies, a small table with papers scattered across it. I was protecting myself, she said, her voice shaking. Victor's people would have killed me. Mark would have killed me. I had to make sure I survived. And what about me? I asked. What about Linda? What about the other women Mark brought into that house? Did you protect them too? Or did you just watch from your basement and knit while their lives fell apart? She didn't answer. She just sat down in her chair, her hands trembling. I walked to the table and picked up the papers. Bank statements, transfer records, the same things she'd shown me in the basement. But these were new, recent. She'd been moving money even while she was running. You never stopped, I said. Even now. Even with the FBI looking for you. You're still doing it. She looked up at me, her eyes hard. What else do I have, Claire? This is who I am. This is all I've ever been. I set the papers down. I pulled out my phone. I dialed the number the FBI agent had given me. I found her, I said. Come get her. Margaret didn't fight. She just sat there, knitting as the agents came through the door. She didn't look at them. She looked at me. You could have run, she said. You could have taken the money and disappeared, like I did. I know, I said. But I'm not you, Margaret. I don't want to spend the rest of my life hiding in the dark. They led her away. I watched from the window as they put her in the back of a black car. She didn't look back. That was 6 months ago. I sold the house. I couldn't live there anymore. Every time I walked past the basement door, I could hear her voice, see her face, feel the weight of 4 years of lies pressing down on me. I moved to a small apartment across the country. I changed my name. Not because the FBI told me to, but because I needed to. I needed to be someone else. Someone who hadn't been married to a man who didn't exist. Someone who hadn't been used by a woman who'd been dead for 20 years. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Margaret. About the life she lived in that basement. About the choices she made. About the woman she could have been if she hadn't spent half her life running. And sometimes, I think about Mark. About the man I thought I knew. The man who made me coffee and kissed me goodbye. I wonder if any of it was real. If any of the love I felt was anything more than another lie in a house built on them. I don't have answers. I don't think I ever will. But I know this. I survived. I walked through the dark and I came out the other side. Not unscathed, not unchanged, but alive. And that's more than Margaret can say. More than Mark can say. The basement is empty now. The house belongs to someone else. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the sound of knitting needles, clicking in the dark, waiting for the next person to open the door. Don't be that person. If you hear something in your house that doesn't belong, check it. If your partner tells you a room is off limits, ask why. And if you find something hiding in the dark, don't run. Turn on the light, face it, and then walk away. Because the only thing worse than finding a monster in your basement is becoming one to survive it. Trust yourself. Trust what you see. And never, ever let someone else tell you what's real. Not even me.